Hi, my name is Evan Armstrong. I work for the Central PA Food Bank's Impact and Policy Research team, and we work on service insights on MealConnect. So you've probably met one of my colleagues, Ashley or Morgan or myself. We all work on service insights. And today I'm here to show you how the data export in service insights on MealConnect works. So from your homepage, if you're an agency admin or have similar permissions, I don't believe agency users can do this, but you can go to your data export. So you go to this menu, hit the reports, go to data export, and from here, you are essentially pulling data out of Service Insights for your own analyses or however you need, whatever reason you might need to do that. So the very first thing you have to do with that before interacting with this is acknowledge that you are taking full responsibility for the information that you are exporting, and that once it's downloaded here, it's no longer covered by Service Insights internal security. It's covered by how good your own cybersecurity is. Don't generally, as a rule of thumb, don't export more data than you need. And once you have used your data for whatever purpose, delete it. But that will open us up to the data export. So there's a couple of different options here. I'm actually going to get to type of data export in just a second. But the first thing, by default, your agency should already be set. We're going to pick on American Rescue Workers today. So, but if you are logging in on your own account, you'll probably already have your agency selected because most of you are only just at one agency. I think Ashley, Morgan, and myself are the only people who really look at all the agencies in an aggregate view. And then you can change the date of information that you're trying to pull here. Um, Service Insights generally won't let you export anything greater over a year. And depending on how big of an agency you are, you might need to do much smaller chunks than that. I recommend, uh, you know, if you can just export the data you need for a specific month, that I don't think anybody really has any issues with. Um, but fiddle with it if it doesn't want to give you the data for a specific time frame. You might just need to break it up into like two smaller time frames and append them together. This does require knowledge of how Excel works, Microsoft Excel, because any data we get here, we are downloading into a CSV file, which you can use through Excel or through Google Sheets, for instance. Both have very similar functionality. But if you're exporting data from here, the idea is that you probably know how to use one of those software, and either you're doing more complicated data transformations with it, or you're just taking this to use as like a list for something for reference. So that will take us directly into, you can also choose, a specific county that you want to pull the data from, where, um, based on household address. So if you only want to pull the data for specific residents of a specific county or city, that's how you would do that. And then you can choose a number of different event specifiers down here. Most of you don't have to worry about that. If you just want your data for everybody you've served from a specific time period, then don't mess with any of these. Just mess with the time period and, make sure you've selected the right agency. But within the data export, there are a couple of different options. I'm not, unfortunately, because we need to preserve neighbor data. Um, I'm not going to show you any of these because they're directly downloading the exports and have the neighbors' names and other personal information there, or personally identifiable information there. So I'm not going to show you these, but I will explain what they all do. So your neighbor roster, that's going to create an Excel spreadsheet, which there is one row for each individual neighbor. Um, so, um, you know, regardless of how many times they visited, even, someone who visited 5 times in that month versus someone who visited once in that month, they will show up once. This is a roster essentially of all of the people who visited in that time period, regardless of how many times they visited. Next one is a household roster. Same principle, but instead of doing one row for each neighbor, it's one row for each household. So if, for instance, you were trying to create a physical list Like you knew your computers were going to go down, or you needed to have a paper report for some reason of everybody who visited in the past 6 months or the past month. Then I would go with either the neighbor roster or the household roster. Probably the household roster because working with households is more convenient. Um, but that would give you a print off list that says, hey, here's this person that visited at least once in this time frame. Um, and then we have four other options. And really, it's just two other options, but there's a very, very data visible version and a very, very data limited version. So those would be the all data exports, and then the household roster all data exports. So the all data exports, similarly to your neighbor roster, will create one row for each neighbor every time they visited or received services from that pantry. So every single neighbor from every household, every time that household got served. So if I have a family of four and I came to your pantry 4 times in that month, I wouldn't just have 4 entries for my household. I would have 16 entries, one for each of my household members each time they showed up. And then there's identified or de-identified. Identified is going to include things like an address, personally identifiable information. De-identified is really just going to limit it down to, the ID numbers that Service Insights automatically assigns or other information that they cannot be identified with. And then household roster is that same principle, right? So one row for X each time this unit has visited, but it's just instead of for the individual, it's for the household this time. So instead of, even if I were same example, household of four that visited 4 times, 4 times to your pantry this month, um, I would only show up 4 times in the household roster all data, because it's only going by household. Whereas in the all data, I would show up 16 times because of each of the members of my household. So, and then there is, again, the identified and the de-identified versions of those, which either limit or don't limit PII. As we've discussed, whenever you can, draw out the least amount of data available. So take a look at these. If the de-identified versions work for you, great. No need to pull down the identified versions. If not, that's fine. You can use them. Just use your best cybersecurity practices. So let's say I'm just looking to get a list. Let's say next month, or let's say this week, there's a really, really big snowstorm scheduled for my distribution. I don't have a lot of hope that we're going to have active internet. So I'm going to print out a list of everybody who's been here since July. So everybody who would have already been in the system. And then anybody else who's new, I'll just send them home with new intake paperwork, or I'll send them home with a paper copy of offline version of the new intake. I'll do my household roster. We'll leave it for age American Rescue Workers. And then since we said we're looking at everybody who's been here since the new fiscal year, we'll go back to July 1st. We'll hit run report. Hopefully this isn't too big. It's just one agency, although the American Rescue Workers is a pretty large agency. So that one worked no problem. It'll go right into your downloads folders. If I hit open, it'll show us the whole rosters and all the information that is included in the neighbor roster there. Like I said, I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to put personally identifiable information in a recorded video for you all to look at. If you are dealing with a much larger download, occasionally it will prop up a message here that says your process has been requested, or your process has been noted. It's just taking a minute, in which case you can check this downloads folder, and eventually, whenever it's done, it should pop up here. But if you need to see its process, right, you can click on my downloads and you can see all the downloads you completed, if there was an error with them, if they have processed properly, and you can get to them from there. But that's about it. Beyond that, it's whatever your own Excel skills can do with the data provided. This is when I do data requests, for the most part, I'm using this data. if it's not something that I can manage with the internal Tableau reporting. So really, this is intended exclusively for people who have some degree of skills with Excel or a similar, software like Google Sheets. Um, so if you don't have to mess with this, I wouldn't. But if those are of use to you and you have those skills, then by all means go into it and you can see um, what kind of statistics you can come up with that data. If that is hopefully useful to your agencies for doing grant requests or things like that. So, um, thank you very much, as always, for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, you can send us an email at serviceinsights@centralpafoodbank.org. Myself, Ashley, and Morgan all check that inbox, so you should be able to get the quickest response by emailing us there. So, thank you very much and have a good day.